Hello and welcome to my Northern Lights tutorial video. These are the supplies that you will need for this tutorial. I will put the complete list in the description below. To start out with, you'll need a 5" by 7" piece of watercolor paper. I'm using Arch's 140-pound cold press paper, but any heavier cotton paper should work. Using my painter's tape, I am taping my paper down to my board, which creates a thin border around the edge. Next, with my pencil, I'm roughly sketching out a guideline of where to place my trees for after I'm done painting the sky. Now I will start mixing my colors. I start out by using an eyedropper to add water to the 4 colors in my palette that I'm using. Green Gold, Cobalt Teal Blue, Prussian Blue, and Quinacridone Purple, all by Daniel Smith, but any similar colors will work. I'm also using a ceramic palette to mix my colors in. In addition to those 4 original colors, I also mix up 3 more greens, 2 using Green Gold and Prussian Blue, and another with Green Gold and Cobalt Teal Blue. Once I have my colors mixed up, I use a scrap piece of paper to test out my shades of colors. Make sure you are using the same kind of paper that you will use for your painting. If you are happy with your colors, then we can begin. I'm using a large flat brush with clean water to fully saturate my entire paper. You don't want any puddling on your paper, but you do want it completely wet. Then using my number 10 round brush, I begin painting in my sky, using big sweeping motions with my Prussian Blue. Then I gradually add in some Cobalt Teal. I want to work fairly quickly here so that my paper doesn't dry. I add in some Quinacridone Purple to the lower right, blending it in with the blue. Now I'll start using my greens, mostly in the bottom of the sky. I want my lightest colors at the bottom of the paper so that they will really pop against the tree silhouette. I also have to apologize for my head being in the camera view. I think I got so wrapped up with painting I forgot I was filming. So now I switch to my size 6 brush and I begin to add in more color and fiddling with the sky. This is always my favorite part, but I still have to work quite quickly. Once the paper begins to dry, I will end up doing more harm than good. Also keep in mind that the colors will dry lighter, but I'm going to do a second coat on the sky before I'm done. Okay, so when I'm mostly happy with my first attempt on the sky, I will let it dry completely. Because I'm impatient, I do use a hairdryer on a very low setting. To re-wet my sky for a second attempt, I first have to clean up the edges with a damp paper towel. Then, using my large flat brush and clean water, I carefully re-wet the sky. I don't want to use too many strokes and risk smudging what I've already painted, so I'm very delicate here. Once the sky is wet enough, I use my number 10 brush to intensify the colors in some areas and to blend it out in others, working until I get the sky exactly how I like it. However, you don't want to overfiddle here, as the paper will dry faster this time. So once I'm happy with the sky, I let it dry completely. Now I'm mixing up some of my white Bleedproof from Dr. P.H. Martin's. This is to create the stars. I don't want the paint too thin or too thick, so I'm using a piece of black paper to test out the splatter effect before trying it on my painting. I load up my number 6 round with the paint, and then I gently tap it on another brush to splatter the paint. I continue this process until I am happy with the amount of stars I've created. Now I switch to my size 0 brush, and I will use some watered down paint to create some larger stars, placing them fairly randomly in the sky. I want some larger and some smaller. Here I'm using my Posca paint pen to add in even more stars. This helps speed up the process a little bit and gives a different size of stars, but it isn't necessary. You could continue to use the white paint instead. Now, going back to the previous stars I created, I add some outlines and make them even larger. And then I'll try to blend out the edges. This will give the illusion that the stars are glowing if they are blended at the edges and come to a brighter white point in the center. So finally, I'm going to add some thin lines in an X shape to a few of the stars to make them look like they twinkle. I'm using my black scrap paper here to test out how thin I can get the paint to be, because you definitely don't want the lines too thick. I keep working at this until I get the stars and the sky just the way I want it. Now that I have the sky completed, I mix up some black paint. I'm using Van Gogh's Ivory Black. I want this paint to be very opaque, not transparent. So I'm not using too much water and I'm using a lot of paint. And so using my smallest brush, which is a size 0, I draw a line for the first tree, starting very thin at the top and then widening slightly as I get to the bottom. Starting at the top, I begin painting my tree, using small strokes to create branches on each side of the line. You may want to use some reference photos for this part, or take some time to practice on a separate piece of paper first. So once I'm about halfway down, I switch to my size 6 brush. This just helps speed up the process. I work down the tree, widening it as I get towards the bottom. I still go back and forth and use my size 0 to add in a few more details. Painting trees takes time, so don't rush. Just continue to repeat this same process as you move left to right until you have a completed forest silhouette. Remember to vary the size and style of the trees, including the placement of branches. You don't want the trees looking too uniform or the same, or it won't look natural. Make sure you bring the black paint all the way to the bottom of the page. And you can always go back and add some more details to the trees until you are completely happy with the forest. Once the forest is done and dry, you can peel the tape away, pulling slowly and at an angle. This is usually my favorite part. Then you can enjoy your completed Northern Lights painting. Oh, but don't forget to sign your artwork. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. As always, happy painting.